One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
Drew, you mentioned how the landscape had changed a couple of years ago, and of course, you guys did make a move from the America East to the Patriot League, and the Big 12 stuff is of course hot and heavy right now, and it's different scope, of course. But I'm curious to ask the simple question of what did you guys find to be the most challenging part of that conference transition?
Well, obviously that transition is never stopping, and the seismic shifts of college athletics are in play again. I'm very pleased that we're so comfortably situated that we can at least we're watching it as an observer, and at the same time when we changed leagues, we went through the exercise of where do we fit. Where do we fit from an institutional perspective, from an athletics perspective, from a budget perspective, geographic? What are our alumni going to really find intriguing and find as a great affiliation for us? And we looked at a lot of options. We landed in the Patriot League, and if you had asked me when we made the move, I would have told you that on a scale of 10, it would have been a 9 out of 10. And I can tell you, after being there and being a proud member, it's a 32 out of 10. So it's just a wonderful fit for us athletically, and more importantly, it's a great institutional fit. But when we transitioned out of the America East, I would say that year of transition was just a tough year all the way around. We wanted to exit gracefully. We wanted to communicate our decision very early, so the America East Conference had the chance to perhaps annex new members, certainly align their schedules in the future, and we did that in due time. And we went to all the meetings that took place, all the committee meetings for the America East, as if we had not left. But it was like we were swimming in two ponds, because we were also trying to become a Patriot League member, and we were going to those meetings and taking place in those calls and trying to really just assimilate our university into that Patriot League culture. We were banned from postseason the year we decided to exit the America East, and we had to manage a lot of student feelings, a lot of coaches who felt really disenfranchised is probably a word that is appropriate, but at the very least, the people were upset. So we spent a lot of time on that endeavor. Coaches are really a creature of habit, and I think that one of the things that we had to address during the transition were some of the logistical items, and that was it wasn't laborious, but it certainly was somewhat difficult to address. Where to eat, where to stay, where do you practice when you're going to go to a new place? What are the travel times? Our travel times were over an hour on an average trip, or over an hour different than they were when we were in the America East. Coaches certainly know where they fit within their own conference, and that landscape. And now that you're switching, you had to deal with that, and you had to deal with the simple emotion of leaving, and that's a tough decision. Even if it's the right decision, it's still a tough decision. You're leaving friends and institutions that you respect and colleagues behind, and then you get to the new league, and I think one of the things that everybody gets worried about, or the somewhat a little bit of apprehension is about how do we fit. How are you going to be accepted? And I can tell you that that's a big concern for some. That was not a problem at all for us. We were never the quote-unquote new kid. We were treated by professionals with open arms. And I think a lot of that is due to the professionalism within the Patriot League. But I also think that it is due to the way we showed our early commitment to the Patriot League philosophy and the values, and that helped us with the transition, and I think we were intent on bringing value to the league. In our case, it wasn't about a TV deal, and it wasn't about money. We were committed to being a great institutional partner, and I certainly hope we've succeeded.
Let's knock out some quick hitters on your personal background. To date, Drew, what are the highlights? What would you point to as the highlights of your professional career?
I think I'm really proud of some of the teams that I've been associated with. as a coach and as an assistant AD, as a deputy AD, as a director of athletics. I think I've been around some great people. I'm really pleased. Obviously, there's a highlight of winning the Frozen Four in 2009, having our men's ice hockey team win that in DC in really glorious and dramatic fashion. But I also know that we played in a Frozen Four a couple years ago and lost as tough a game as anybody can ever lose. And I was as proud of that team and being associated with that team and the way they carried themselves and the way our coach carried our team and led our team. I was as proud of that in that 2014-15 team as I was of any team. I think it was just a wonderful group of individuals who represented the institution well. I don't really know if I point to things because of my leadership and say that this is why they were successful, but I think I have really been pleased to be associated with a baseball team that at the 2-year level went 3-24 and really wouldn't have beat a high school JV team, and 3 years later we're in the Junior College World Series, and by the time they were finished their upswing, we were building a minor league baseball facility on the property, and those are things that I'm certainly proud of. I'm really thrilled that I'm at a place right now, and this serves as a daily highlight. I'm really pleased that I'm at a place that values both academics and athletics, and I think that we have shown with teams that can win at the national level, that can compete nationally, that can compete for national championships. But we value the academic experience. Our kids are bright individuals, worldly people. Really pleased with the way they represent the institution, and I'm just pleased to be part of this institution.
How about the other side of that question? What professional setbacks or failures do you still use or use as motivation today that you're comfortable sharing?
I'm much more comfortable with the word setback than I am failure, so I'll kind of attack that. I've always been proud, or at least I've taken some pride in the fact that I think that I'm not afraid to analyze some mistakes that have been made along the way, and I think you need to do that as an administrator. I've always been kind of struck by the baseball pitcher who throws a 3-1 slider and the guy hits it 410 feet, and in the post-game conference, the pitcher says, I would throw the slider again if I had that same opportunity, and I said he'd hit it over 400 feet again. So sometimes you've got to look at things and say, what did we do here that was maybe a mistake, and what did we learn from that, and what can we do differently the next time? I think in the area of personnel, it's not an exact science. It's human resource management. It's very difficult to have the correct, perfect fit. I think you do the best you can for the institution and the students and so forth, but sometimes you miss. And I think of somebody that I promoted years ago to a job, and I thought he was the right guy, and he had the right skill set, and was a wonderful person. He just wasn't ready for the job, and I don't think that he had the day-to-day training to succeed, and he became the focal point of criticism, certainly because coaches are measured largely by their record, and I think that the record wasn't where people thought it should be, and I actually thought that was my fault because I promoted somebody who just wasn't quite ready, and I've always looked back at that. It was a thorough search. It was just a miss. But I've always looked back at that with an element of guilt and an element of this is an example that still sticks with me of something that we could have done better.
What one book would you point to as an absolute must read for others in college athletics?
One book. I'll give you two quick hitters, and I don't think they're on a lot of lists. They're not the traditional books that people are pointing to for leadership, but Ron Chernow, who's become more famous for the Hamilton play, and he wrote the book that became the script for the play, but he wrote a book about George Washington called The Life, and it's really it's a comprehensive biography. I think it's about 900 pages, and It's one of the best leadership books that I've ever read, and it's simply it's a tale of Washington's evolution as a leader. Things were not always going great. He had to overcome a lot of obstacles, had to navigate infighting and a lot of internal politics and people trying to undermine him. And through all this, I really think, and what came out was he led by example, and he knew that people looked at how he carried himself in tough times and how he dealt with setbacks. He knew that that was going to convey a leadership style and a confidence, and that was going to get people through tough situations and tough ordeals. And he was a master of dealing with situations, and sometimes he jumped right in, and sometimes he let a situation or an ordeal just kind of play itself out, kind of simmer on the stove. And I took some great leadership lessons from that book. And the second book would be a guy who I've always thought is one of the more underrated football coaches of all time, is Jimmy Johnson. And I remember picking up a book and was never a Cowboys fan, and just picked this book up called Turning the Thing Around. And he had written it when he was with the Cowboys, and it's really just about developing an organizational philosophy. It's sticking with it. And he talks about not deviating from a plan. I don't think he gives the impression that he was stubbornly sticking to something, but he was pretty intent on sticking with, here's how we do it. And I think he really took a landscape view of who he wanted to be as a coach and what he wanted his organization to look like. And I took that from the book, that don't take short-term gains and sacrifice long-term goals. And I think along the way you're going to deal with some critics and take some lumps and have people question what you're doing on a daily basis. But don't sacrifice. Don't try to win a game on Tuesday that's going to weaken you for the next year. And I think a lot of places they get caught up in the day-to-day, and I still think you've got to take kind of that horizon view of what you want your organization to look like. He talked a great deal about Troy Aikman, and Troy Aikman as a rookie quarterback, and his whole philosophy was, we're going to suffer with Aikman as a quarterback who's a rookie, and he's going to get so many snaps because he's going to be so much better in year 2, and that's going to get us to this point in year 3, and that's going to get us to this point in year 4. It's what can we do with him long term, and I think he showed patience, and I kind of refer back to that sometimes in my own, really in my own life, just to show an element of patience when you're dealing with something. But it really was to me a fundamental management book about how to construct an organizational blueprint and how to stick with your values and have a plan.
I have one more, and I want to go back to the branding campaign. How will you know if and when it works?
I don't think it's anything that you're going to be able to measure. I don't think that many branding campaigns outside of, if you're not talking some sort of sales value, this is an esoteric value that you're trying to measure. I do think the fact that we've had so much feedback and people telling us that they like it, and people telling us that they like not just the campaign, if you will, but the declaration of values, that they think that is who Boston University represents, or what Boston University represents. Every time somebody tells us that, I think that's a success.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.